Unit 7, Reading 2.
Before and after the Civil War, other changes happened in the west of the country. In 1848, gold was discovered in California. A gold rush soon began. In 1858, there was a huge silver discovery in Nevada. Other gold and silver discoveries came. The hope for land and riches in the west attracted thousands of new people. The port of San Francisco grew, and people often came overland in wagons through the Great Plains and Rocky Mountains. These areas were still home to many Indians, but whites thought this land was good for farming grain and cattle. Sometimes there was violence between Indians and settlers as they fought over this land. There were also few police in the towns of the Old West, so people often carried their own guns. As more settlers took these lands, treaties signed with Indian tribes were broken again and again. The last Indian wars were fought in this time. From 1876 to 1877, an alliance of Plains Indians fought the U.S. Army in the Great Sioux War and won the 1876 Battle of Little Bighorn. In the 1877 Nez Perce War, Chief Joseph led about 750 of his people on an 1,800-kilometer fighting escape through Idaho and Montana to Canada. In the Apache Wars, the Apache leader Geronimo led several rebellions from 1878 to 1885. Despite the hard fighting, waves of American soldiers and armed settlers were too powerful. Herds of buffalo, which were so important for Indians on the Great Plains, were nearly hunted to death by white settlers. In 1890, the frontier was closed and the last independent Indians were defeated. The last battle was the one-sided Wounded Knee Massacre of hundreds of Sioux in 1890, including women and children. By this time, most of the remaining Indian groups had been pushed onto small, poor reservations of land to live. Poverty and alcoholism became big problems on Indian reservations. The U.S. Army built forts in the West for security. Some of these forts slowly grew into towns and cities like Omaha and Boise. The government gave large pieces of land to railroad companies to cheaply build new lines. Immigrant workers for building railroads came from as far away as Ireland or China. By 1869, the Transcontinental Railroad linked California with the East. In 1862, the government began selling Great Plains land to farmers. If a farmer agreed to work the land for 5 years, they could get 160 acres for free. These farms were called homesteads, and the land was hard and dry. Only steel tools could cut the earth, and water came from deep underground wells. Farming the Great Plains was difficult, and farmers' lives were not financially secure, but trains helped farmers send cattle and crops to cities. Through the late 19th century, the Industrial Revolution accelerated, and the U.S. continued to industrialize. Factories used mass production to produce large amounts of goods for sale in new department stores. Factories needed more workers, and a wave of millions of immigrants came to the U.S. to work in the land of opportunity. Many were Catholics from Southern Europe or Jews from Eastern Europe. The country's population became more mixed while industrial cities like Chicago, Pittsburgh, and Detroit grew. Some writers described the U.S. as a melting pot where immigrants joined the culture. By the end of the 19th century, some Americans began to look out towards the rest of the world, but others focused on the problems growing at home.